Hello, and thank you for watching this introduction and live demo of the OpsMx Continuous Software Delivery System of Intelligence. Our product is architected to allow software delivery at scale through our intelligence layer. In this demo, we will show 5 key focus areas of our solution. Reduction in production failures through the intelligent continuous risk assessment. Secure delivery of software at scale through automated policy and governance controls. Reduce time to delivery through real-time approval and collaboration among stakeholders. Enhanced observability and traceability through comprehensive audit and visibility. And easy software delivery to multiple clouds through our easy-to-use orchestration layer. Okay, let's jump into the demo. To help us get oriented, we'll start with one of the application dashboard. This dashboard is a high-level overview of all the pipelines and the services that are being manufactured through those pipelines that are under management of the OpsMx Continuous Software Delivery System of Intelligence. To help us get started, we'll start by taking a look at one of the result sets for our continuous verification testing. Automated analysis uses machine learning and natural language processing models to provide a confidence score for the system under test and insights into how the system under test is different from the expected behavior. Automated analysis is used in a couple of different ways by our customers. Customers like Indeed use it to automate delivery decisions based on the score, while customers like Juniper use it to faster triage root cause analysis. The confidence score is based on both logs and metrics that are being generated by the system under test. One can use either or both in the analysis. Here, as I drill into this, as I've gone ahead and deployed this application to QA, I've wired up all of the data sources that are associated with this, so both logs and metrics, to be able to collect those things while the deployment's running and while the test suite is running against this deployment. And as you can see here, I've been able to isolate from the upwards of 7,400 lines of logs, I've been able to isolate the 4 log clusters that are associated with this. Now what we're doing here is we're using machine learning and natural language processing to, one, identify these logs as something that are unexpected or not as part of the baseline, and also interpret these log messages. So very easily I'm able to sort of categorize these things as error messages or warnings. I can alter these classifications if I so choose. If I come in and review this and say, that's not really something we need to pay attention to, I can reclassify and the machine learning model will learn. I could do the same thing with actually classifying or tagging a log cluster. If I get to root cause analysis, I can go ahead and actually assign it something, in this case a specific log message or a set of log messages, a cluster tag, and then ultimately document what that cluster tag represents. And so ultimately I'm able to very quickly and easily distill all that log information and only pay attention to the things that are important. I can do the same thing with metrics. If I look here at metrics, I can see, from this perspective, in this particular metric, what the baseline should have looked like or what the baseline looks like. So, as a guide to what this release should look like and what this release looks like. And as you can see there are significant differences. And so this was enough to drive the score, the confidence score, down to a place where I'm going to stop the pipeline and actually come in and review this data. And as part of reviewing that data, I can ultimately go ahead and start the process of correlating both logs and metrics in this context to ultimately be able to go ahead and actually surface what may have gone wrong. Now, the other piece of the intelligent delivery platform is around compliance. One of the largest issues that our customers face is the idea that when they set policy around pipelines or around software delivery, it's very labor intensive to make sure that these policies are being followed. Here, not the case. We've ultimately automated this process for you. So we give you the ability to go ahead and actually set the policies as you see here, create new policies as you need to. But ultimately, the idea behind this is to automate the process of evaluating those pipelines against these policies and giving you the ability to flag policy violations and ultimately stop pipelines. That is continued here as we look at the audit trail. So here, if we look at the audit trail, I can look at the policy audit and all of the pipeline runs that were evaluated for policy. Now, the audit piece doesn't stop here just at policy. It also extends to pipeline execution. So when we start looking at every time a pipeline was executed, I can ultimately go ahead and inspect the data that's associated with that pipeline execution as well. And so when we look at policy and compliance along with auditing, again, another pillar of features that the OAS intelligence layer sits on top of. Now, the other part of this that we talked about earlier during the initial introduction was the ability to go ahead and actually set approval gates. These are really a way to reduce the biggest friction in delivering at speed. By combining policy with approval gate info, one can automate the workflows without involving human decisions for most of the deliveries. And if I look here, one of the things that's tricky about approval gates is I can dictate that somebody has to approve something, but really the trick here is giving them the data that they need in order to be able to evaluate whether or not something should be rejected or should be approved. Here, again, I can look at all of the different pieces of data that the system has collected about this particular release and ultimately make that decision right from here. So I can evaluate the changes to the code. I can go right into Git and ultimately see what's changed. I can evaluate the various JIRA tickets that were associated with this and see whether or not these are in a proper state and the right folks have looked at this or approved this. I can also look at things like external security tools. So in this case here, if I'm using SonarQube to perform my static code analysis. But I could be using something like Twistlock or Aquasec to be doing my container security analysis as well. So any of these things that I'm doing that level of analysis on, I can come in here, I can look at the results of these things. Let's take a look. And ultimately, again, have all the information that I need in order to make a decision around promoting or rejecting this build. It's all right here at my fingertips and very easy to get my arms around. Okay, so now that we've talked a little bit about the system of intelligence, the continuous verification, the manual approval gates, and the policy gates, let's take a look at an application that sort of brings all this together. In this case here, we have an app called App Guestbook, where we're going to go ahead and take a look at how OpsMx is able to bring all of these things together into a secure and compliant pipeline while providing you with visibility that you need in order to understand sort of what is deployed in which sections of your overall environment. Let's take a closer look. So here, if we were to click on the pipeline itself for a moment, what we'll see here, and the pipeline we're going to be working with is going to be promoting this guestbook UI to production. If we were to look here, we have all of our stages. We have, we find the artifact, we get the images, but then we start with a continuous verification step and a check of that score. Then we look at the approval step, where we bring in a person to go ahead and actually review the data that's associated with this and approve it. And then we have a policy step where we run the data in the pipeline at runtime up against policies. All of this happens before the deployment happens. And so what we'll do here now is let's go ahead and actually kick this pipeline off so that we can sort of take a closer look at this in action. So I've gone ahead and actually clicked the run the pipeline there. So it's going to go ahead and start that. It's going to go ahead and do our continuous verification. Let's pause while that finishes. Okay, so we've passed through our continuous verification. We've done the continuous verification check. Now we're on to the actual approval stage. So here, let's go ahead and actually go back to my application dashboard for a moment and take a look at the application itself. And we'll see here we have one pending approval. So if we were to go ahead and actually drill into this, we'll ultimately be able to see that approval. So let's go ahead and go directly here to, and there's our approval. So here now, I have all the data, as we mentioned earlier, available to me that I can review here. And ultimately, I can go ahead and actually approve this. So I can do deploy to production. and I can approve it. Now, if I were to look back here at the pipeline, what's going to happen is this approval gate, as part of the OES intelligence layer, is controlling this pipeline. So now I've gone ahead and done that approval. Now it's gone on and is moving on to the policy check. It has passed the policy check and now is going to the deployment phase. So now this is ultimately going to go ahead and actually deploy. So if I were to go back to my application dashboard for a moment and look for that particular application, and I were to look at the deployments, what I'll see is I'll be able to see that deployment to that production, that guestbook UI, that deployment to production here at 2253. So this has happened. It's happened live. Now, the other piece of this that I want to point out is, as an enhancement to that observability piece that we talk about so much, here what we've done is we've really given you an overview of the different environments that you're managing. So in this case here, prod and dev. And we've also given you a deployment history for this particular application. So at any point, if I want to look at, or understand what's been deployed to what environment, this is the place I can go. I can get the status of the deployment here. And ultimately, if I were to click on this, I can ultimately see a history of the deployments for this particular application. And then I can pick one and ultimately understand, sort of how that got here. How did this particular application get here? What was the process? And down here, here's all the data that is associated with what got that particular version to this particular point in time. This was, ultimately a review of everything that was looked at in the approval gate, and then ultimately I can get an understanding of when the approval happened. So again, another view into that sort of visibility or that observability piece holistically around your deployments being controlled with the OpsMx intelligence layer. Now let's take a closer look at some additional observability. The other piece of this that we talked about earlier is, sort of the insights and the overview, the high-level overview associated with what's happening in my environment. Now, we talked a little bit earlier about the application dashboard. As you can see here, that gives me a nice high-level overview about the various pipelines that are associated with this and sort of what their current states are. I also can look at the delivery dashboard. Here, I'm getting a nice high-level overview of what is happening in my environment. The most active pipelines, the most successful pipelines, the pipelines that tend to fail the most, and then the amount of time it takes people to react to requests for manual judgments. All of these insights give me sort of a real high-level overview of what's happening in my environment that allows me to focus my attention in a specific area if I see something that doesn't look quite right. Another area requiring visibility is the deployment of the OpsMx agent. Now, the agent can be deployed in 3 different scenarios. The first is it could be deployed to a remote Kubernetes cluster to allow safe and secure interaction with that cluster, between that cluster and our orchestration layer to deploy software. The next is it could be deployed within an Amazon, an Azure, or a GCP instance to ultimately allow for our orchestration layer to interact with resources within that account. Very quickly, easily deploy this and safely interact without having to have any of the account credentials exposed. And then the third is when we are deployed either in the cloud or one of our SaaS instances needs access to resources that sit behind a corporate firewall. So maybe the Jenkins server sits there, maybe the Artifactory server sits there. The need to be able to go ahead and interact with those services from a cloud-based instance of our software stack is another area where we may need to deploy the agent. Now here, what we're doing is ultimately being able to look at sort of where those agents are deployed, the health of those agents, and the ability to go ahead and interact with those agents come upgrade time. Very, very basic, but again, a very important part of the visibility structure. And then the fifth piece that I know we talked about during the introduction was around the actual delivery of software. And so when I look here at the orchestration layer and I want to look at continuous delivery, I can come over to, as an example, the SpecDrive application and drill into this particular pipeline. And as you can see here, there's very simple and straightforward from a delivery perspective or from an orchestration perspective. I can take a look at the configuration of the pipeline, and you can see all the steps that were used here to ultimately go ahead and actually build this pipeline out. I can ultimately go through the process, if I want to, of exporting this pipeline to JSON. The other piece of this that's very, very straightforward is I can ultimately go through the process of deploying to multiple clouds. In this case here, if I were to configure this application, I can see that I'm configured for deployments to both Kubernetes and AWS. So again, a multi-cloud, multi-target workflow that can be set up here as part of our orchestration layer. So that is the really quick overview or demo of the product itself. Very, very straightforward, very easy to set up for our customers, and very quick to be able to start adding value immediately to the CD process. Thank you.